Hi, I'm Lance Lambert. Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Vehicle Show. We are in Puyallup, Washington at the Harnish Lincoln Mercury dealership. This is a dealership that puts on a car show every year that is absolutely incredible. This year there are 700 cars here. It is an amazing place, amazing car show, and thanks to Chris Brown, come on in here, Chris, who is the owner of Harnish Lincoln Mercury. Thank you very much for putting this show on.
Oh, you're welcome.
How did this come about? What made you decide you needed to do a car show, and how come it's not just Lincolns and Mercurys?
Well, first of all, I love old cars. So it was about 5 years ago, Larry and I decided that we wanted to do it. And 3 years ago, we finally pulled the trigger and did it. So that's kind of where it grew from.
Yeah, it's a big trigger. And boy, people are having fun here. And there's food, and Elvis is here, and all kinds of great things here.
Yes.
Well, you mentioned Larry HANSON. What a coincidence. There is Larry right there. How you doing, buddy?
Thanks, Chris. I'm doing good. I'm doing great.
What a great show. I know Chris, he stayed in the background, wrote a few checks, and said, can you put this together for me? And man, have you done it.
Well, thank you very much. Chris wants to go all out for the people, and that's what we've done. He does not hold back. He wants to make it the best show, and that's what's happened.
Well, what a team here. What a great car show. What a great group of guys. So do what I tell you to do every week. Just kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, and as I was growing up and getting into the car scene, there were certain people in the Northwest who were really the big shots, the guys that we looked up to. They were really old guys. Like when I was 16, they were like 19 or so. They were really old guys. Well, one of these guys, who apparently I still look up to, is Mr. Bob Davidson. Bob, how are you doing?
I'm doing very fine, thank you.
You have cars over the years, over the decades that I've paid attention to, and they are always customized mildly, but they're always really tasteful and traditional. How is it that you have such a good eye for that?
Well, you know, as a kid, I grew up in the 50s, you know, and I was looking at all the hot rod books, and I was wishing I had a car, you know, and of course, back then it was hard to even attempt to build one, and it was the style that registered in my mind at that time. George Barris and some of the custom shops across the country and the work they were doing, and seeing some of the work that Von Dutch got me into the field that I got into in pinstriping, it's amazing, you know. I look back at that, and I have a lot of photos that explain that and things of that nature. It's unbelievable.
You are one of the premier pinstripers on the West Coast and through the whole country, but you've been fairly moderate on this. I don't see, it's not covered head to foot with pinstriping.
Well, that's the 50s, see. When they did start striping, it was very moderate, very tasteful, and I tried to follow that tradition with this car. Bring it out of the 50s with the visor, the spotlights, you know, lower the car, the wide white walls. That's the way it was in the 50s for the person that didn't have a lot of money to build a full-blown chop channel lead sled, you know.
Your Buick here, what's the running gear on it?
It's a straight 8. It says 3-speed on the column, and it's been lowered by Riviera Springs to give the low-down look. And pretty much it's the Buick of that era at that time that the rich man bought, so to speak.
And good for you for leaving the straight 8 in there.
Absolutely. It's a tour car, and it'll go anywhere. And it's all been rebuilt, and it runs beautifully. I have no problems with this. You know.
The Northwest has such a strong car community and such a large car community the Pacific Northwest. You have been here since, it started. You really are one of the legends in the Northwest. What have you seen over that period of time, from when it all started to now the traditional rat rod, whatever, are coming back? What have you noticed over that length of time?
Well, over the length of time, a lot of guys were building custom cars and having hot rods, and they were doing the expensive paint jobs on them and things that were in style at that time. And now we're going back to the era where the rat rod's coming in, because we didn't have a lot of money. We couldn't build the hot rod we want as youngsters. And as we get along in life and later in life and our families are grown up and gone, and we want to flash back to what we thought we were trying to do as a kid or a youngster and build that car today. So if you look at the age some of these people are, they're not the youngsters, but yet they're setting a new trend with this. It's just amazing. They can use anything they want on these things and slam them down on the ground, to make them look good and eye appealing. But that's the way it was, back in those days. And we're doing it in our own little garage or out behind the barn with what tools we had at that time and not a lot of talent. It's amazing.
Well, you made up for the talent in a short period of time. Bob, thank you very much for being on the Vintage Vehicle Show. This is a beautiful car, and keep up the good pinstriping work. Linda SCHEIBAL, this is a really nice 1954 Buick. Tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you. Well, it's a custom. It's sitting on a 1970 Chev Caprice chassis, and it was stretched about 4 inches to accommodate the Buick body. And the front headlights have been canted about 1.5 inches. It has 256 Oldsmobile bumpers. The overrider bar is at 39 Studebaker. It's channeled 4 inches. The current Carson style top was chopped 2 inches. These are the real deal Appletons. The legs pipes were put in to stabilize or to make the frame a little better for the convertible. And in the back, it's been stretched about 4 inches. and it has Lee lenses.
It's very traditional looking. It looks like I picked up a copy of Rod and Custom from 1959, and it would look exactly like this.
Well, it was built by a fellow from Yakima, Bill Ross, and I think it was a labor of love. He said he won't be doing more customs like this for the amount of time that was put into it. He built it in about 97, completed it in 98. It is a true Century convertible, and at the time he first completed it, it had a dark blue standard convertible top, and then in the early 2000s he added the Carson style top.
And the Carson style top, meaning that it doesn't fold up, that thing just lifts up.
Exactly, it lifts off.
This is a kind of car that I think was in favor, fell out of favor just a little bit, and now has come just screaming back.
No, it has, and I think, of course, for the ease of driving, this car has 43,000 miles on it, and so it's been driven. It's been to Arizona and back a number of times that we've done, and of course, Bill had the circuit, and so it's just been enjoyed a lot, and we intend to do a lot more with it.
Do you get out to any of the traditional, like the billet-proof shows, or where there's more of the rat rod and traditional rods? How's it go over at those shows?
It goes over well. They appreciate it.
Well, the Harnish Lincoln Mercury dealership here, which has spent a fortune on this free show. Everything's free here. The shirts are free, the food's free, the entry's free. I think they're a little overwhelmed. I believe Larry, that kind of the head man of this, he was hoping for 400 cars, and they have over 700.
Well, close to 700. That's true. So it's just grown bigger. This is just the third year. And so considering 3 years, I think it's phenomenal. It's got to be the second largest show in this area.
Sue Limbo, you have one of the coolest cars here. I love Independence. You have a 51 Nash Statesman, correct?
Yes, Statesman Super Air Flight.
It's a mouthful, and it has side pipes. It's been moderately little custom touches here and there. Tell us about it.
Okay, I bought it at LeMay's auction 2 years ago. We did put a new engine in it. It's got a small block Chevy, 4-barrel and stuff, the side pipes. I needed a tilt wheel and automatic steering, so we've got that in there. But otherwise, the seats we've left. Every once in a while, I'll put these big buckets in it and all that. And I said, no, I want the original seats, just cover them. So everything else, it's all there. Other than the motor, transmission and that, it's all what it came with.
I'm going to tell you something that you're so tired of hearing, but when I was a kid, we had one of these.
So did I. Not one of these. Ours was a 57 Rambler, but it was pretty cool.
I had somebody email the show one time when we were in California at a museum, and they had one of these there, and we made the comment that people didn't like them, and somebody sent me the statistics on the sales on these things, and they liked them a lot back then. They actually sold a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I got a magazine just recently, and there was a big article in there, and in 1951-52, they gave this car, it was the Ambassador, but looked just like this, to the Miss America. That was their car for her, so somebody liked them at the time, but just nobody kept them.
That might have seemed appropriate at the time, but looking back, it's like Miss America and a Nash.
Exactly. No, you'd think Cadillac now or whatever, but I just liked it. It's just different, and it was fun to put together. My husband didn't like it. I found it at the auction. We were out walking through a lot of old cars and stuff, and I saw it, and I thought, oh my gosh, I love that thing. So I went and brought him down to look through it. He said, that's the car you want to buy? I said, no, that's the car I'm going to buy. And he was, oh God. But once he started getting it together, I thought, this really is pretty cool. Yeah.
Drives pretty well, goes down the road great?
Drives great, yeah.
What kind of
reaction? A lot of noise.
What kind of reaction you get?
Oh, people give you the thumbs up. Yeah, it's just different. People don't know what it is.
Forgive me for being a little self-indulgent, but it plays into this. I had a 58 Rambler, American. It was a pretty cool car like this. It had a V8 motor in it, and you're talking about how your husband didn't like this car, but you liked and said it's your next car, right?
He didn't like the body style. And when we were working at it, I said, oh my God, look at that from the back. Isn't that beautiful? And he'd just give me the looks,
And at the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm at a car show with my Rambler, my 58. A guy goes crazy for it, makes me an offer, a very handsome offer. Has to show it to his wife. He brings his wife to look at it. She looks at it and says, the only way I'll ride in that car is with a bag over my head.
I believe it. I've had that reaction too. My husband would bring people out of his shop while he was wearing it. He said, that's the ugliest car I've ever seen, or why did she buy that? And I said, I think it's beautiful.
Those people don't end up being your dinner guests again, do they?
Well, not as often, no.
Gary SCHEIBAL, you don't see many four-door convertible, and you don't see very many 40 Mercury four-door convertibles. Tell us about this car.
Well, they produced about 979 of them, and it was the only year that Mercury had a convertible sedan. It's a long story and a long search to find this car. It took me 32 years, but I was persistent, and all good things come to those who are patient.
It looks pretty stock. Have you updated it at all?
No updates. All I did was install a dropped axle to get the front down a little bit, put headers on it for the dual exhaust, and because the car had only been driven 50 miles in 30 years that the previous owner had it, it needed a complete rebuild of the fuel system, and the brakes, and that's about all I've done.
It's such a rare body style. Do you ever run across any other ones when you're at car shows?
No, not really, but I did do a Good Guys event the first year that I had this, and I thought I'd be the only one there, and they stole my thunder because two other models just like it drove in, and it was incredible.
Mm-hmm. This has the old flathead in it, of course.
Yes, it does. It's 95 horse, 239 cubic inch, and runs very, very well, thank you.
They're notorious for overheating. Do you have that problem with this?
You know, when they were new, they didn't overheat. It's because people don't run proper thermostats. There's just a number of things that you can do that will make them boil water. But I've never had a problem with this one doing that.
The future for this car, you have a summer ahead of you of lots of car shows, or is it going to rest? And kind of tagged on to that question, was this kind of shifty woman we interviewed a little while ago that was driving a 54 Buick that just happens to be parked next to this, and she just happens to have the last name. So lots of shows ahead, and the two of you go together?
Oh, absolutely. It is definitely, we're a couple. And that's what makes it so much fun.
That seems to be more and more common in the hobby in the last 10 years. I'm seeing more and more couples showing up together as opposed to just, a guy.
That's absolutely true. I've been around the hobby for a great many years, and your observation is correct.
Well, I'm going to go see if my wife is here anywhere. So, Gary, thank you very much for sharing with us about your 1940 Mercury.
Thank you. I'm honored.
We have the good fortune to be standing here with the Danny Vernon and the Marsha Vernon. If you like Elvis, you know about these people. They do an incredible job with their show. They do all the time. I've gone to your website, and it is absolutely jam-packed with dates when you guys are working.
It's fun to be Elvis. Good time to be Elvis, that's for sure.
How'd you get into this? being Elvis?
Well, my father was a big fan, and I found his 8 tracks and scratchy records when I was just a child, like 5 or 6, and I fell in love, without knowing he was a movie star or anything. I fell in love with the first note, and I was hooked. So I started singing along in my bedroom to myself and singing to Elvis, and he would sing to me. And
there's people that sing to themselves in their bedroom that end up institutionalized at some point.
I was wondering which way I was going to go. I didn't know.
Marcia, you do a great Anne Margaret, and what a perfect mix for the two of you together. Usually when you guys come as a package when you travel around doing the show. How did you, did that come first, or Danny came first, or Elvis came first? How did your little show all come together?
Well, actually, it was Danny first. He needed somebody to run the music. That was me. Then he said, "Hey, you're a redhead. Can you sing?"
Hey, I just realized,
oh, I'm a redhead. So he said, "Why don't you try doing Anne Margaret?" And I did, and I liked it. It works.
There are some people that think, myself included, that when you guys were in Seaside, Oregon a couple of years ago, and you were doing Anne Margaret, you pulled out all the stops, and people are still talking about that performance. That was fantastic.
Well, it helps being double jointed. Yeah, we have a lot of fun. There's a little bit of comedy. There's always the bickering that Anne Margaret did with Elvis, and I think it's just a great combo. Yeah, that's real, by the way.
And what a perfect car for Elvis and Anne Margaret to be driving, a '56 Cadillac. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we've had a couple fans that have been following us for the last, 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, 5 to 7
And I started seeing their Cadillac. Of course, I couldn't help but notice. And they've been coming around a little more. Their names are Rosa and Ron Murphy. And they've been driving this car for the last 20 years like this. She painted it, had it all done like this. And she had us over for dinner one night. And she just said, "Hey, I want to give you my car."
Does she have any others, and does she watch the Vintage Vehicle Show? What a great time we've had here in Puyallup, Washington at the Harnish Lincoln Mercury Car Show. A great event. It's an annual event, happens every year. If you missed it this year, you can get a chance to go to it again next year. A big thank you to Chris Brown. He's the owner here and did a great job of backing this show. Larry Hanson is a producer of the show. What a wonderful job he does. Larry has the golden touch. Whatever he touches turns into a great car show. And this wouldn't be a great car show and a fun television show if you weren't watching. So thank you very much for tuning in. And if you like this, tune in again next time. Until then, bye-bye.